Welcome, dear viewers and listeners, to Go to Sleep Historian. Tonight, we invite you on a gentle journey through the quiet, magical world of early American myths and legends, a land where forests are misty, rivers flow softly, and sleepy villages hold stories whispered through the years. Have you ever wondered how Johnny Appleseed wandered the land planting orchards? Or how Bunyan quietly shaped the northern forests with calm strength? What about the soft, mysterious tales of Sleepy Hollow, where autumn fog drifts through quiet roads and old Dutch houses? Tonight, we will explore all of this and more at a gentle, unhurried pace, perfect for relaxing, studying, or drifting peacefully to sleep. If you enjoyed this calm journey through history, please subscribe to our channel for more sleepy stories from the past, each paired with soothing music to help your mind unwind. Your support allows us to continue sharing these relaxing tales with viewers and listeners around the world. Stay with us as we slowly wander alongside the gentle giants, the wandering orchard keeper, and the whispering spirits of early America. And when our spoken story comes to its serene conclusion, soft, relaxing music will flow smoothly, carrying you deeper into calm and peaceful sleep. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Let us begin, and let the soft rhythm of history guide your thoughts into quiet imagination and rest. The night settles over the early American wilderness with a softness that feels almost ancient, as though the land itself has exhaled after a long day of quiet labor. The forests, endless and deep, stretch far beyond the reach of any campfire glow. Their silhouettes rise like dark waves against the pale sky, a sky brushed with the faint silver of distant stars. In these slow, gentle hours, the world of the early settlers grows hushed, wrapped in a calm that invites the weary traveler, the wandering storyteller, and the listener at the edge of sleep to rest their thoughts. It is a night in the late 1700s or early 1800s, of those countless evenings when America was still a place of wide spaces, long shadows, and stories whispered beneath timbered roofs. Villages were small, roads were narrow paths of packed earth, and the world moved at the pace of footsteps, river currents, and the steady rhythm of horses crossing quiet ground. Winter was never too far away in this new land. Even in the warmer months, a cool breeze often slid down from the northern mountains, reminding settlers that nature set the pace, the seasons, and the moods of life. Tonight, the forests hold their breath. A thin mist gathers between the trees, drifting like soft ribbons across the mossy ground. Somewhere far off, a lone owl releases a slow, hollow call that echoes through the valley. Its voice rises for a moment, then fades back into the stillness. The air is crisp, touched with the faint scent of pine, distant wood smoke, and the earthy quiet that settles over the land after dusk. If one followed the narrow trail running through the trees, they would eventually reach a small settlement. Just a handful of wooden cabins, a mill beside a slow-turning creek, and a simple meeting house where lanterns glow faintly behind oiled paper windows. The houses are built from rough-hewn logs, chinked with clay and straw, their roofs steep beneath the weight of past winters. Smoke curls softly from the chimneys, rising into the night air in lazy, drifting lines. Inside these homes, families settle in for the evening. The crackle of the hearth fire mixes with the soft murmur of conversation. Children wrap themselves in woolen blankets, their eyes heavy as parents share stories passed down from older relative stories of the frontier, of strange happenings in the woods, and of figures who seem half real and half woven from imagination. For many settlers, these tales are simply another part of life, a way to make sense of the world around them. For others, the stories offer comfort during long nights, when the land feels wide and full of honor. Near the edge of the settlement, a small campfire flickers beneath a large oak tree. Travelers sometimes stop here before continuing deeper into the forest or toward the next distant village. Tonight, the fire burns low, its glow casting soft gold across the ground. Two traders rest beside it, their voices slow and quiet as they speak about roads they have taken and places they have seen. These travelers are the lifeblood of early American storytelling, carrying tales from one settlement to the next, like embers that light new flames. Not far from the campfire, the river flows with steady calm. Its surface moves like smooth silk beneath the moonlight. On its banks deer wander without hurry, pausing to drink from the cold, clear water. The rustle of leaves blends with the soft rush of the river, creating a natural lullaby that could lull even the most restless mind into stillness. This land, vast and untamed, has always belonged to stories, long before settlers arrived. The indigenous nations who lived here shaped countless tales about the forests, the skies, the mountains, and the spirits that watched over them. These stories carried wisdom, guidance, and memory, connecting each generation to the land. As European settlers spread westward, they brought their own traditions, their own legends and beliefs, and over time the stories of many cultures mingled, shifting and reshaping themselves into new American forms. Myths and legends that grew from frontier hardships, deep forests, starlit winters, and the uncertain promise of a new home. Tonight's quiet is the perfect setting for such stories. The land is calm, as though waiting for a gentle voice to rise and share old memories. In many homes, a single candle remains lit beside the hearth. Shadows dance slowly along the wooden walls, as someone, perhaps an elder, perhaps a weary traveler, begins to speak in a low, measured tone. They might begin with the soft tale of a wandering man planting apple seeds wherever he roamed. Or they might turn to the northern forests, where a giant lumberman and his great blue ox made their home among towering pines. Or perhaps they recount the quiet valleys of the Hudson River, where villagers whisper of a rider who appears only on misty autumn nights. All of these stories rest gently in the minds of those who hear them, shaped by the hush of the evening, softened by the glow of the fire. But before any one story is told in full, the listener is invited to settle deeper into the moment. The night is unhurried. The world outside slows with every passing breath. The wind moves only faintly through the tall grass and the branches overhead. Somewhere near the settlement, a horse shifts in its stall, the gentle clink of its bridle echoing softly. The stars are scattered across the sky like dim lanterns, guiding the dreams of those who sleep beneath them. They shine above mountains, forests, prairies, and rivers, above all the vastness that early Americans learned to navigate, often with hope, often with fear, but always with a sense of wonder. In this quiet hour, the land holds all its untold stories as though they are resting just beneath the surface of the night. These tales are gentle companions, born from long winters, long journeys, long silences, and long memories. They offer comfort to those who gather around the hearth, to those lying awake in small cabins, and to those drifting toward sleep under the open sky. And so, the journey begins here in the hush of early America, where mist lies between the trees, where firelight softens the darkness, and where the storyteller's voice rises slowly, like a warm blanket being drawn over the listener. The legends of this land wait patiently, ready to be retold in soft tones that ease the mind into stillness. When you are ready, we will step forward into the next chapter, where the roots of these early American stories begin to unfold like quiet pathways through time. In the early days of the American frontier, when the land stretched wide and unbroken toward distant horizons, folklore began to take root like seeds carried on a wandering wind. These stories were not created suddenly, nor did they emerge from a single mind. Instead, they grew slowly, gently woven from the daily lives of settlers, travelers, and communities who sought meaning, comfort, and companionship in a world that was often vast, silent, and unfamiliar. As the night deepens, imagine those early years when the population was scattered across wilderness and open fields. Small villages lay hidden between thick forests, and roads were little more than narrow trails carved by horses and weary footsteps. Life moved softly. Evenings came early, especially in the long winters, and families gathered near hearth fires as darkness settled outside their wooden homes. In those quiet hours, stories became a companion to the cold, a gentle way to bridge the silence between the flicker of lanterns and the whisper of wind against the cabin walls. Here, in these simple moments, American folklore began to shape itself. Much of it emerged from survival. Settlers worked from dawn until dusk, clearing land, tending crops, navigating rivers, and building shelters. Hardship was familiar, yet hope remained constant. And in the midst of that balance between struggle and perseverance, stories formed. Tales that honored bravery, cleverness, endurance, or kindness. legends that offered inspiration when the night stretched long and the forests outside felt endless. But these were not only new creations. Many settlers carried memories from distant lands. They brought European tales, old fables from England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, France, the Netherlands, and beyond. These stories arrived across oceans and resurfaced again beside American hearths. Yet the land they found themselves in was different, filled with uncharted woods, tall mountains, deep river valleys, shifting seasons, and unfamiliar wildlife. As people retold their old stories, they began to change them, bending them gently to match the world they now lived in. A humble farm became a new stage for an old European tale. A strange sound in the forest became a creature spoken of only at night. A wandering traveler transformed into a local figure whose name would echo through the region for generations. And sometimes, new stories blended softly with indigenous legends already rooted in the land. Though these cultures remained distinct, the influence of nature, the same mountains, rivers, and forests, shared by all wove their tales into a landscape shaped by wonder and respect. Picture a winter evening in a small settlement, perhaps in the Hudson Valley, perhaps near the Great Lakes, or somewhere far along the frontier trails. Snow lies deep upon the rooftops, muffling each sound until only the crackle of the hearth seems alive. Families sit close together, wrapped in blankets, warming their hands near the fire. Outside, the world is silent, cold, and dim. But inside, someone clears their throat softly, signaling the beginning of a story. Long ago, they might begin, in a voice both steady and gentle. When these lands were still wild and the rivers carried secrets, the children lean closer, sleep tugging at their eyes, while adults listen with a quiet appreciation of people who understand the comfort found in shared tales. The story may speak of spirits that protect the woods, or travelers who discovered courage in places they least expected. It may describe a man wandering with a bag of apple seeds, or a mighty figure who could stride across frozen lakes. But beneath each tale lies something deeper, an unspoken connection between the people and the land they are learning to call home. As settlements grew and travelers moved from place to place, folklore traveled with them. A story told in a cabin one night might be repeated weeks later in another region, softened or reshaped by the voice of a new storyteller. Each version carried a touch of the speaker's personality, imagination, and understanding. Over time, the stories drifted like river currents, changing shape as they moved. A tale shared by a trader along a snowy road became different when retold by a farmer beside a summer hearth. A legend whispered by a fisherman on a fog-covered river changed slightly when spoken by a teacher in a village schoolhouse. Oral tradition moved gently, guided not by ink on paper but by tone, memory, and the needs of the listeners themselves. American folklore also grew from the land's natural beauty. The mountains of the Northeast, wrapped in mist, the vast forests of the Midwest, heavy with snow, the rolling fields stretching under endless skies. These landscapes invited imagination. Nature held both serenity and mystery, giving life to tales that explained strange lights, unusual sounds, or unexpected events. A shifting shadow in the woods might become a wandering spirit. A sudden storm might be attributed to a giant's footsteps. A quiet valley might be said to hold the memory of something ancient and forgotten. In truth, these were simply the everyday harmonies of nature. But stories gave shape to the unknown, allowing listeners to drift peacefully between reality and myth. Many tales also reflected values settlers: hard work, kindness, generosity, endurance, respect for nature, and the belief that extraordinary things could arise from ordinary lives. Through storytelling, parents taught their children not only about the world but also about hope that hardships could be softened by imagination, and that even the quietest person could hold remarkable strength. And so, American folklore took its form slowly, like a candle burning low in the night, blending memories from afar with the experiences of the present, mixing the familiar with the mysterious, growing gently in the hearts of communities as they faced long winters and uncertain journeys. Even today, these stories echo through time. When we speak of Johnny Appleseed wandering through peaceful orchards, or Paul Bunyan striding across snowy forests, or the gentle whisper of legends in Sleepy Hollow, we are hearing voices from those early hearths, voices that traveled through forests and villages, carried across rivers, kept alive by families, travelers, and dreamers who understood the power of a well-told tale. Tonight, as the quiet deepens and the world softens around you, imagine those early storytellers sitting beside fires, breathing warmth into the cold air, shaping stories that have survived centuries. Their words drift through time like calm winds through tall pines. And now, in this quiet hour, they reach you once more. When you are ready, we shall follow one of those gentle tales into the Ogurt's rivers and quiet paths of early America, where a wandering figure began his peaceful journey. The early morning mist clings to the riverbanks like a soft veil, and the land awakens beneath a pale, silver light. On a narrow path that follows the quiet bend of the water, a lone figure walks with steady, unhurried steps. His pace is neither rushed nor weary. Instead, he moves with the calm rhythm of someone who has long understood the peaceful companionship of the open road. This wandering man is John Chapman, known 2 generations simply as Johnny Appleseed. Long before he became a legend, he was simply a traveler who loved the quiet of the wilderness and the gentle promise carried within a handful of seeds. His story begins not with grand announcements or heroic feats, but with a soft dawn breaking over the eastern forests of the young American frontier. Picture him on this calm morning. His clothing is simple, worn from travel but clean and cared for. His hat, frayed around the edges, rests at a comfortable tilt, shading his eyes from the rising sun. On his back hangs a small sack, filled not with wealth or personal possessions, but with the seeds of apple trees, smooth, light enough to carry 4 miles, yet full of potential. In his hand he holds a walking stick, soft and polished by years of gentle use. And on his face rests an expression touched with kindness, as though he greets every tree, every river, and every breeze like an old friend. Johnny traveled lightly, carrying only what he truly needed: a pot for cooking, a blanket for cool nights, a small Bible tucked inside his vest, and his treasured seeds. He chose the wandering life, not out of loneliness, but because he felt guided by a calm purpose: to bring apple orchards to the frontier, to help families establish gardens of their own, and to spread a sense of peace through small, quiet acts. In those days, apple trees were more than mere orchard plants. They offered shade in the summer, blossoms in the spring, fruit for eating, and cider for the cold winter months. An orchard could help a settlement thrive, and so, as Johnny walked from village to village, he carried with him the quiet promise of growth, comfort, and nourishment. The land around him stretches in soft waves rolling hills, gentle rivers and forests filled with tall maples and broad oaks. Birds sing from high branches, their calls echoing in the cool morning air. A thin trail of smoke rises from a distant cabin, where a family begins their day with chores and small prayers for good weather. Johnny pauses for a moment, watching the smoke drift upward. It reminds him of all the homes he has passed in his journey's simple wooden cabins, warmed by hearth fires and filled with people who welcomed his presence with soft smiles and grateful hearts. When he reaches the cabin later that morning, a young boy runs out to greet him, cheeks flushed from the cold. News of Johnny Appleseed often traveled ahead of him, carried by travelers and riverboat men. Children especially loved him, for he spoke to them gently, shared stories of the road, and sometimes placed a few smooth seeds into their small hands. The family invites him to breakfast. Inside the cabin, the air is warm, heavy with the scent of porridge and the soft hiss of the fire. Johnny sits with them, speaking little, for he preferred the simple comfort of listening. When they ask about his journey, he answers in quiet, thoughtful phrases, describing the rivers he has followed and the orchards he hopes to plant near the next settlement. After the meal, Johnny steps outside with the father of the home. Together, they walk along the western edge of the property, where the land rises gently and the soil is rich. Johnny kneels and presses his hand into the earth, feeling its coolness. He closes his eyes for a moment, sensing the promise hidden beneath the surface. "Here," he tells the man softly, "is good ground for an orchard." And so they begin. Johnny marks small circles in the soil, outlining where the trees will stand. He works with calm conviction, showing the family how to plant the seeds, how deep to set them, how to protect the young saplings from winter frost. His movements are quiet, almost meditative, as though planting is both labor and prayer. When they finish, A stands by, smiling gently. Before him lies nothing more than small mounds of earth, unremarkable to most who pass by. But Johnny sees something else, future shade for tired farmers, blossoms that will fill the air with sweetness, apples that will brighten tables during winter months. He sees the orchard before it exists, growing in the quiet shelter of time and patience. Johnny continues his journey that afternoon. The family offers him food for the road, which he accepts with gratitude. As he walks away, the children wave from the doorway, their voices soft but full of affection. He raises his hand in a slow gesture of farewell, then follows the path back toward the river. The river is his companion for many miles. Its gentle current murmurs beside him, guiding him through valleys and wooded hollows. Sometimes he stops to rest beneath a willow tree, dipping his hands into the cool water. Other times he crosses narrow wooden bridges, pausing at the center to watch the sunlight ripple across the surface. The world around him moves with an unhurried grace, matching his own quiet rhythm. As the day grows warmer, Johnny's thoughts drift to the people he has met. Travelers, families trying to build a life from the rawness of the land. He remembers their gratitude, their hopes, and the way a simple orchard can change the spirit of a place. Each tree he plants is a small act of care, a quiet offering to the future. And though he never seeks recognition, his kindness spreads like soft roots beneath the soil, touching more lives than he will ever know. By evening, the sky glows with soft hues of lavender and rose. Birds settle into their nests, and the first stars appear above the tree. Johnny finds a peaceful clearing near the river, where wildflowers sway in the fading light. Here, he sets his small camp. He gathers kindling, lights a tiny fire, and warms a pot of simple food. As the flames flicker, he opens his Bible and reads a few quiet passages, savoring the stillness of the hour. Then he leans back against a fallen log, letting the sounds of the night surround him. Crickets chirp. The river whispers. A light breeze moves through the leaves overhead, carrying the gentle scent of pine. This is the life Johnny Appleseed chooses. Life without haste, without noise, guided by compassion and the belief that small, steady acts can change the world. Wrapped in his blanket, he closes his eyes beneath the open sky. The stars shimmer above him, scattered like seeds of light across the darkness. Tomorrow he will walk again. Tomorrow he will plant again. And in each seed, he will leave behind a quiet reminder that kindness, like the apple tree, grows best when it is given freely and tended with care. The morning sun rises slowly over the horizon, spilling pale gold across the open fields and the quiet woods. The light moves with a softness that matches the quiet spirit of the man who walks beneath it, a wanderer with gentle eyes, a steady step, and the simple tools of a planter's life. This is Johnny Appleseed, continuing his calm journey across the young American frontier. But today, instead of wandering deeper into the wild paths or distant settlements, he pauses to tend the orchards he has planted through the years. In these small groves, scattered across valleys and riverbanks, he is a kindly orchard keeper, watching over the growing world he has gently coaxed from the soil. Picture one of his earliest orchards, tucked into a low hollow where the earth is lush, and the air holds the faint sweetness of apple blossoms. Once, this place was nothing more than an empty stretch of land, a quiet curve of meadow bordered by tall oaks and slender birches. Now, rows of young apple trees stand like slender guardians, their branches stretching upward with hopeful grace. Dew glistens on their leaves as the morning wind drifts softly through the grove. Johnny walks among them, his steps slow and thoughtful. He kneels to press his hand into the earth, feeling its coolness. He checks the bark for signs of new growth, gently brushing away small insects that might harm the saplings. When a branch bends too low, he supports it with a simple wooden stake. When he finds a sapling that has struggled through the winter, he speaks to it in a soft voice, as though offering encouragement. Those who witnessed him often said he cared for trees the way some people care for old friends. But Johnny's orchards were more than patches of land. They were lifelines for the families settling nearby. When he first planted them, he did so not for profit, but for service. He believed that every home should have access to fruits that could nourish, preserve, and comfort. Apples could be dried for long winters, pressed into cider when crops failed, and served quietly at evening tables after long days of work. To Johnny, The orchard was a symbol of hope, something stable in a world that was constantly shifting. As he tends the trees, he recalls the many settlers who have passed through these groves. Women carrying baskets filled with blossoms, their faces touched with gratitude. Children running between the rows, laughing softly as they gathered fallen apples. Fathers standing beside the young trunks, imagining how tall the trees would grow by the time their children reached adulthood. Every tree held a story, every orchard a quiet memory shared with the land. Later in the day, Johnny walks to a nearby cabin, one belonging to a family he has helped several times through the seasons. Their homestead, once bare and exposed, is now framed by rows of apple trees planted under his guidance. The mother meets him at the doorway, smiling warmly. She offers him a bowl of fresh stew, and he accepts modestly, sitting near the hearth as the fire crackles gently. The family speaks of their recent harvest. Their children tiptoe closer, eager to tell Johnny how many apples they gathered last autumn. The father nods with gratitude, saying that the orchard has given them enough to eat, enough to share, and enough to carry them through a difficult winter. Johnny listens quietly, a soft glow of contentment settling in his expression. For him, this is the true purpose of the orchard, not the land itself, but the lives it touches. After the meal, Johnny and the father walk outside. They move along the rows of young trees planted beside the house, pausing to check the buds forming at their tips. The father mentions a concern about the cold nights returning soon. Johnny Niels examines the soil and gives gentle instructions on how to layer straw around the base to protect the roots. His voice is calm and patient, each word shaped with care. When he finishes, he places a few fresh seeds in the father's hand, smooth little reminders of the future. As the afternoon drifts into evening, Johnny makes his way toward another orchard farther down the valley. This one lies near a small river, where he once camped during a chilly spring. He remembers that night well. A sudden frost had settled over the land, threatening the young saplings he had planted only days before. He spent hours shielding them with whatever materials he had: blankets, pieces of canvas, even his own thin coat draped over the smallest ones. By dawn, the cold had passed, and the saplings stood unharmed, their tiny leaves glowing softly in the early light. To him, saving the trees felt no different than helping a traveler in need. The river still flows with the same quiet murmur. Birds dip down to drink from its surface, and dragonflies skim across the ripples with delicate wings. Johnny kneels beside the orchard here, running his fingers along the low branches. The trees are older than the others, stronger, with thicker trunks and deeper roots. Some already bear fruit, their small, pale apples hanging like soft lanterns in the fading light. He picks one gently, turns it in his hand, and smiles. Not because it is large or perfect, but because it exists. Because a seed planted years ago has grown despite storms, cold seasons, droughts, and time. It is a simple reminder that small acts, tended with patience, can yield quiet wonders. Evening settles slowly across the valley. The sky deepens into shades of violet and dusk blue. The wind softens. The river continues its slow, steady song. Johnny gathers his belongings and walks toward the cluster of trees at the orchard's edge. From there, he can see the glow of a few distant homes, their lanterns flickering gently like stars fallen to earth. He thinks of the people who will gather apples here in the coming months, of the meals they will prepare, of the cider pressed in wooden barrels, of the children who will carry baskets half their size. He imagines the laughter, the songs shared during harvest seasons, and the quiet gratitude that fills homes during winter nights when the orchard-esque gifts are laid out on the table. For Johnny Appleseed, these thoughts are enough. He asks for nothing in return. His reward is the orchard itself, the living, breathing reminder that kindness is never wasted, even when it grows slowly. As night deepens, he continues his walk, following a narrow path through the trees. The leaves rustle gently above him. Fireflies appear between the branches, their soft lights drifting like floating embers. Johnny raises his hand to brush a leaf lightly, almost as a farewell, before stepping onto the open trail once more. Ahead of him lies more wilderness, more settlements, more familias, and more quiet places where apple seeds will one day take root. He walks without hurry, guided by the calm knowledge that every seed planted is a promise left gently, and the earth a promise. He is content. to leave for others to discover long after his footsteps fade. The northern night settles slowly across the forest, wrapping the world in a blanket of quiet blue. Snow rests deep upon the ground, reflecting the pale shimmer of the moon. The tall pines stand motionless, as though listening to the soft hush carried through the air. In the heart of this winter stillness, a small cluster of log cabins forms a tranquil logging camp. Smoke rises gently from the chimneys, drifting like silver threads toward the star-patched sky. This is a night for rest, for shared warmth, and for stories whispered softly around the campfire. Inside the main cabin, the lumbermen finish their long day's labor. Wooden tools rest against the wall, boots dry near the hearth, and coats hang from pegs carved into the beams. Their voices are muted, softened by the peace of winter's night. Outside, a slow wind moves across the snow, stirring up faint spirals of white that drift like ghostly feathers in the moonlight. The men step outside in small groups, drawn by the comfort of the campfire glowing in the center of the clearing. Its orange light flickers across the snow, casting long, wavering shadows. The flames crackle in gentle rhythms, releasing brief sparks into the cold air before dissolving into the darkness. The sound is calming, steady, a perfect companion to the deep silence surrounding the camp. A large birch log has been placed on one side of the fire. It bears the marks of enormous hands, strong enough to lift it easily, yet gentle enough not to split the bark. It is one of the logs Paul Bunyan himself carried here during a recent visit. The lumbermen, though accustomed to the giant's presence, still speak of it with quiet wonder. As the fire warms the crisp night, the men gather around, boots crunching softly in the snow. A pot of warm drink rests atop a metal stand, releasing a faint, comforting steam. The air smells of pine, fresh snow, and smoke, an aroma that seems to carry the memory of countless winters. The group settles into a comfortable silence. Someone stirs the fire, sending a glow across their faces. Then, as often happens on nights like this, one of the older lumbermen lifts his gaze toward the dark treetops and begins to speak in a low, unhurried voice. His words float gently into the stillness. He tells of a winter long past, when the snow fell so heavily that it piled higher than the cabin roofs, creating pale ridges that stretched across the land like rolling waves. Travel became nearly impossible, and the forest grew quieter than anyone could remember. It was during this winter, he says, that Paul Bunyan and Babe, the blue ox, helped save an entire settlement, hidden deep in the pines. The lumbermen gather closer, though not with excitement, rather with the slow attentiveness of listeners settling into a sleepy tale. The fire pops softly as the storyteller continues. According to the old tale, the snow drifts had grown so tall that families were trapped in their homes, unable to reach the river or chop firewood. The cold thickened around them, pressing like a heavy blanket. Then, just when hope seemed to fade, the ground began to tremble with slow, rhythmic steps. Paul Bunyan appeared from the northern forest, his great figure rising above the treetops, his breath trailing clouds of frost in the icy air. With Babe beside him, Paul cleared paths through the snow, each sweep of his arm carving tunnels wide enough for wagons. Babe's hooves created trails, stamping down the thick blankets of snow with steady precision. The two of them worked quietly, their movements sure and calm. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the settlement was free, its pathways open, its families safe, its fires burning brightly once more. The listeners around the campfire murmur softly, letting the legends sink into the cold night air. For them, Paul Bunyan's presence is not a tale of thunderous feats or exaggerated noise. Instead, he is a gentle winter guardian, a figure who appears when the world grows hardest, offering strength with peaceful purpose. Another lumberman adds his own story, this one spoken even more quietly, almost like a lullaby. He recalls a night when a fierce northern storm swept through the forests. The wind howled, the trees bent beneath its force, and the snow fell so thickly that the sky disappeared from sight. The men in the camp could not sleep, their hearts uneasy with the weight of the storm. But in the dark hours before dawn, they heard a sound deep, steady, almost like the heartbeat of the forest itself. It was the slow tread of Paul Bunyan walking through the storm, guiding Babe with a calm voice that soothed even the wind. The giant carried fallen trees away from the cabins and steadied the roofs with his enormous hands. Babe, moving with deliberate gentleness, cleared the snow from the pathways and pressed his warm body against the outer walls to block the cold wind. By morning, the storm had passed. The camp stood untouched, blanketed only by a thin layer of new snow that sparkled under the early light. The lumberman often said that on that night, the giant and his ox did not save them through strength alone, but through a quiet understanding of how to ease fear in the darkest hours. The fire crackles again, brightening briefly before settling back into its slow rhythm. A gentle hush falls over the group as the men sip their warm drink. Above them, stars shimmer in the clear winter sky, their light steady and faint. Another voice rises, this time younger, recounting a smaller story told by his father, a story of the time Babe, the blue ox, tired from a long journey, lay down beside a frozen lake. When Babe stretched out to rest, his size and warmth were so great that the snow melted around him, forming a perfect circle of soft ground in the midst of winter. Flowers did not bloom there, nor did grass rise from the frost. The travelers often spoke of the unusual ringa, patch of warm earth in a season ruled by cold. Some said it was a simple accident of size and heat. Others believed it was a quiet gift left behind by the gentle creature who walked beside the giant. No one argues which version is true. Around the campfire, truth and legend mingle softly, like snowflakes drifting together in the evening air. These tales are not about grand displays or impossible feats. They are about comfort, resilience, and the tender strength found in companionship, whether between people, between man and nature, or between a giant and his blue ox. The firewood settles with a faint sigh, sending a final spark into the sky. The lumbermen lean back, their breath steady, their eyes heavy with the slow pull of sleep. The stories continue in low tones, whispered memories, old legends softened by time, winter, and the calming glow of the fire. As the night deepens, the camp grows silent. Snow begins to fall again, gently drifting across the clearing. The flakes land softly on coats, boots, and hair, before melting into tiny beads of water. The fire dims its glow, flickering steadily as though it, too, listens to the quieting world. Above the camp, the stars burn brighter, and the northern woods rest beneath their calm light. Somewhere in the distance, far beyond the treetops, over frozen lakes and snowy ridges, Bunyan and Babe continue their peaceful wandering. Their steps may echo faintly across the land, but only as a reminder of gentle strength, winter guardianship, and the stories that warm the long, cold nights. In this quiet hour, wrapped in the glow of the campfire, its last embers, the legends of the northern woods settle into the hearts of all who listen, easing them gently toward sleep. The northern night settles slowly across the forest, wrapping the world in a blanket of quiet blue. Snow rests deep upon the ground, reflecting the pale shimmer of the moon. The tall pines stand motionless, as though listening to the soft hush carried through the air. In the heart of this winter stillness, a small cluster of log cabins forms a tranquil logging camp. Smoke rises gently from the chimneys, drifting like silver threads toward the star-patched sky. This is a night for rest, for shared warmth, and for stories whispered softly around the campfire. Inside the main cabin, the lumbermen finish their long day's labor. Wooden tools rest against the wall, boots dry near the hearth, and coats hang from pegs carved into the beams. Their voices are muted, softened by the peace of winter's night. Outside, a slow wind moves across the snow, stirring up faint spirals of white that drift like ghostly feathers in the moonlight. The men step outside in small groups, drawn by the comfort of the campfire glowing in the center of the clearing. Its orange light flickers across the snow, casting long, wavering shadows. The flames crackle in gentle rhythms, releasing brief sparks into the cold air before dissolving into the darkness. The sound is calming, steady, a perfect companion to the deep silence surrounding the camp. A large birch log has been placed on one side of the fire. It bears the marks of enormous hands, strong enough to lift it easily, yet gentle enough not to split the bark. It is one of the logs Bunyan himself carried here during a recent visit. The lumbermen, though accustomed to the giant's presence, still speak of it with quiet wonder. As the fire warms the crisp night, the men gather around, boots crunching softly in the snow. A pot of warm drink rests atop a metal stand, releasing a faint, comforting steam. The air smells of pine, fresh snow, and smoke, an aroma that seems to carry the memory of countless winters. The group settles into a comfortable silence. Someone stirs the fire, sending a glow across their faces. Then, as often happens on nights like this, one of the older lumbermen lifts his gaze toward the dark treetops and begins to speak in a low, unhurried voice. His words float gently into the stillness. He tells of a winter long past, when the snow fell so heavily that it piled higher than the cabin roofs, creating pale ridges that stretched across the land like rolling waves. Travel became nearly impossible, and the forest grew quieter than anyone could remember. It was during this winter, he says, that Paul Bunyan and Babe, the blue ox, helped save an entire settlement, hidden deep in the pines. The lumbermen gather closer, though not with excitement, rather with the slow attentiveness of listeners settling into a sleepy tale. The fire pops softly as the storyteller continues. According to the old tale, the snow drifts had grown so tall that families were trapped in their homes, unable to reach the river or chop firewood. The cold thickened around them, pressing like a heavy blanket. Then, just when hope seemed to fade, the ground began to tremble with slow, rhythmic steps. Paul Bunyan appeared from the northern forest, his great figure rising above the treetops, his breath trailing clouds of frost in the icy air. With Babe beside him, Paul cleared paths through the snow, each sweep of his arm carving tunnels wide enough for wagons. Babe's hooves created trails, stamping down the thick blankets of snow with steady precision. The two of them worked quietly, their movements sure and calm. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the settlement was free, its pathways open, its families safe, its fires burning brightly once more. The listeners around the campfire murmur softly, letting the legends sink into the cold night air. For them, Paul Bunyan's presence is not a tale of thunderous feats or exaggerated noise. Instead, he is a gentle winter guardian, a figure who appears when the world grows hardest, offering strength with peaceful purpose. Another lumberman adds his own story, this one spoken even more quietly, almost like a lullaby. He recalls a night when a fierce northern storm swept through the forests. The wind howled, the trees bent beneath its force, and the snow fell so thickly that the sky disappeared from sight. The men in the camp could not sleep, their hearts uneasy with the weight of the storm. But in the dark hours before dawn, they heard a sound deep, steady, almost like the heartbeat of the forest itself. It was the slow tread of Paul Bunyan walking through the storm, guiding Babe with a calm voice that soothed even the wind. The giant carried fallen trees away from the cabins and steadied the roofs with his enormous hands. Babe, moving with deliberate gentleness, cleared the snow from the pathways and pressed his warm body against the outer walls to block the cold wind. By morning, the storm had passed. The camp stood untouched, blanketed only by a thin layer of new snow that sparkled under the early light. The lumberman often said that on that night, the giant and his ox did not save them through strength alone, but through a quiet understanding of how to ease fear in the darkest hours. The fire crackles again, brightening briefly before settling back into its slow rhythm. A gentle hush falls over the group as the men sip their warm drink. Above them, stars shimmer in the clear winter sky, their light steady and faint. Another voice rises, this time younger, recounting a smaller story told by his father, a story of the time Babe, the blue ox, tired from a long journey, lay down beside a frozen lake. When Babe stretched out to rest, his size and warmth were so great that the snow melted around him, forming a perfect circle of soft ground in the midst of winter. Flowers did not bloom there, nor did grass rise from the frost. The travelers often spoke of the unusual ringa, patch of warm earth in a season ruled by cold. Some said it was a simple accident of size and heat. Others believed it was a quiet gift left behind by the gentle creature who walked beside the giant. No one argues which version is true. Around the campfire, truth and legend mingle softly, like snowflakes drifting together in the evening air. These tales are not about grand displays or impossible feats. They are about comfort, resilience, and the tender strength found in companionship, whether between people, between man and nature, or between a giant and his blue ox. The firewood settles with a faint sigh, sending a final spark into the sky. The lumbermen lean back, their breath steady, their eyes heavy with the slow pull of sleep. The stories continue in low tones, whispered memories, old legends softened by time, winter, and the calming glow of the fire. As the night deepens, the camp grows silent. Snow begins to fall again, gently drifting across the clearing. The flakes land softly on coats, boots, and hair, before melting into tiny beads of water. The fire dims its glow, flickering steadily as though it, too, listens to the quieting world. Above the camp, the stars burn brighter, and the northern woods rest beneath their calm light. Somewhere in the distance, far beyond the treetops, over frozen lakes and snowy ridges, Bunyan and Babe continue their peaceful wandering. Their steps may echo faintly across the land, but only as a reminder of gentle strength, winter guardianship, and the stories that warm the long, cold nights. In this quiet hour, wrapped in the glow of the campfire, its last embers, the legends of the northern woods settle into the hearts of all who listen, easing them gently toward sleep. Dawn rises gently over the Hudson River Valley, its pale gold light filtering through a curtain of soft morning mist. The world awakens in layers. Hear first the faint rustle of reeds along the water, then the quiet hum of distant birdsong, and finally the slow stirring of a village tucked deep within the valley's folds. This village is Sleepy Hollow, a place where time seems to drift rather than march, where fog lingers along the roads, and where every peaceful dawn feels like a memory unfolding in the present. Sleepy Hollow rests on a landscape shaped by nature's calm hand. Rolling hills wrap around the village like protective arms, and the nearby river moves with unhurried currents, its surface often hidden beneath drifting veils of mist. Tall trees, maple, beech, and ancient oak stand, like guardians along narrow roads. Their branches arch overhead, forming leafy tunnels that darken even in daylight, especially in the cool months when the air grows heavy and the mornings seem longer than the days. The village itself is small and quiet. Modest wooden homes with steep roofs line the gentle slopes. Their windows glow with the faint warmth of hearth fires, still crackling from the night before. A few Dutch-style houses, built by early settlers, stand with thick brick walls and wide chimneys. Smoke drifts lazily from these chimneys now, curling upward and mingling with the pale fog. Sleepy Hollow is known best for its stillness, a stillness not born from loneliness, but from deep timeless calm. Locals say the valley has always been quiet, even before the earliest settlers arrived. Something in the land encourages slowness, reflection, and a softening of the senses. Travelers who pass through often remark that the air feels heavier here, but not unpleasantly so, more like a blanket placed gently over the village, urging all who live within it to rest a little longer and speak a little softer. On mornings like this, the schoolhouse bell remains silent. The roads echo only with the muted clop of a lone horse heading toward the mill. The river lingers in its own dreamlike haze, and the forest beyond the village seems to hum with the same peaceful rhythm that has shaped Sleepy Hollow for generations. Wandering through the village, one might notice the old stone bridge that spans a narrow branch of the river. Moss clings to its sides, and its arch casts a gentle shadow on the water below. The bridge is a familiar sight to all who live in Sleepy Hollow, an ordinary, quiet place by day, but one that takes on a strange, mist-filled beauty when evening approaches. Lanterns hung along its posts flicker softly in the night, their reflections trembling across the flowing water. Just beyond the bridge stands a small churchyard, where ancient gravestones rest beneath the spreading arms of great trees. The stones lean slightly, worn by time and softened by moss. A wooden fence surrounds the yard, though it appears more symbolic than functional. Reminder of boundaries between the living and those who have long since found their rest. The place is not frightening. Instead, it carries an old, melancholic calm, like a page from a history book left open for the wind to read. Sleepy Hollow's charm lies not in excitement, but in its gentle, unchanging nature. People live slowly here. They gather in small groups on porches, sharing quiet stories and warm cider. They tend gardens that bloom in spring and rest beneath frost in winter. They speak in soft tones, as though not to disturb the deep tranquility that blankets the land. The villagers are fond of storytelling, particularly tales that drift between history and legend. As the morning mist lifts, the memory of last night's story still lingers in their thoughts. They recount old Dutch traditions, unusual events along the river, and whispers from the forest that have been told and retold for generations. These tales are passed from family to family, growing gentler with time, woven into the fabric of village life like threads of soft color. It is in this environment, half wakefulness, half dream, that the most famous legend of Sleepy Hollow was born. But this story, in its original form, is too sharp, too chilling for the quiet mood of a bedtime tale. Here, the legend becomes something softer, a whisper carried through fog, a memory shaped by gentle voices, more mystery than fear, more mist than darkness. Before the legend unfolds, imagine how evenings settle in Sleepy Hollow. The sky dims into hues of lavender and fading rose. The last birds return to their nests, their calls drifting away like tiny echoes. Villagers dim their lanterns, and warm lamplight slips softly through the windows of old houses. The roads fall silent, except for the faint sound of water moving beneath the stone bridge. Fog rolls through the valley with the night breeze, gathering near the churchyard, drifting between the trees, and settling around the homes. It hugs the earth like a slow, wandering river, filling hollows and curling around fence posts. Sometimes it thins enough to reveal a lantern glow. Sometimes it thickens until even the closest tree trunk appears as a faint, silver shadow. It is in this twilight world, neither day nor night, that stories take on their soft power. The villagers sit near the hearth or on porches, wrapped in shawls, voices low, telling of quiet mysteries. They speak not with urgency or fear, but with wonder, as though the valley itself listens. They speak of wandering figures seen on misty evenings, their shapes softened by the fog. They speak of sounds that echo faintly through the trees' hoofbeats, perhaps, or simply the shifting of branches in the wind. They speak of the old roads that twist through the woods, where the fog grows thickest and the moonlight rarely reaches. And they speak, of course, of a rider, image more whisper than warning, who appears only when the valley is wrapped in its deepest fog. A rider without form, without detail, described not with dread but with the quiet curiosity one reserves for dreams. Children listen wide-eyed but unafraid, sensing the calm in the voices around them. For in Sleepy Hollow, even legends of wandering riders become gentle, softened by the valley's slow and timeless rhythm. As night deepens and the last flames settle in the hearths, Sleepy Hollow rests once more beneath its blanket of soft fog. Houses dim, roads quiet. The river hums its steady lullaby. All is still, save for the faint rustle of trees as the wind moves through their branches. In this peaceful world, the legend of Sleepy Hollow is not a story of fright, but a story of mist, memory, and the quiet way the past lingers in places where time slows to a dreamlike drift. Soon, we will walk along those fog-shrouded paths with gentle steps, meeting a figure whose story is told in whispers rather than fear. Evening settles gently over Sleepy Hollow, drawing long shadows across the narrow roads and quiet homes. Lanterns flicker behind windows, casting warm glows onto the soft fog drifting through the village. The church bell has long since fallen silent for the day, and the cool air carries with it the faint scent of damp leaves and river mist. In this tranquil hour, when the valley has begun to blur into the softness of night, a solitary figure walks slowly along the edge of the woods. This is Ichabod Crane, the schoolteacher of Sleepy Hollow, slender and gentle in both voice and manner. Ichabod is not a man of boldness or spectacle. He is soft-spoken, thoughtful, and polite, with a calm presence that suits the quiet rhythms of the valley. His steps are long but unhurried, his gaze drifting between the treetops and the winding path beneath his feet. He carries a small satchel filled with books, volumes of lessons, stories, and old histories. He reads by candlelight in the evenings. He often says that in a quiet place like Sleepy Hollow, the pages of a book feel louder than the world itself. On this evening, Ichabod leaves the schoolhouse after finishing his lessons for the day. His students have returned to their homes, their laughter fading into the soft fog. The little schoolhouse, built from sturdy planks of timber, remains warm with the lingering heat of the hearth he kept burning through the cool afternoon. A few last curls of smoke drift from its chimney as the door closes gently behind him. The road from the schoolhouse winds through a grove of tall trees. Their branches intertwine overhead, forming a canopy that filters the faint moonlight into scattered silver patches on the ground. The forest has a soft voice of its own, leaves rustling, branches whispering, and the distant murmur of the river flowing through the valley. Ichabod walks here every evening, finding comfort in the serenity of the woods. The people of Sleepy Hollow know him well. They see him visiting families on weekends, offering help with reading lessons, sharing news from the schoolhouse, and sometimes enjoying warm meals with the villagers. He's especially fond of simple gatherings, quiet evenings, spent listening to old Dutch stories, sipping cider beside the hearth, and watching the fog roll across the fields. But no matter how lively those evenings become, Ichabod never lingers too late. The whispering woods call him back, guiding him along familiar paths beneath the moon. As he walks deeper into the forest, the mist thickens around the trunks and along the ground, curling around his boots like drifting strands of pale silk. The trees stand tall and silent, their silhouettes rising into the darkening sky. The woods do not frighten him. Instead, they feel like companions, constant, watchful, and timeless. He often describes them as having voices of their own, though he means this in a poetic, peaceful way rather than anything mysterious. Occasionally, he pauses to listen. A gentle chorus fills the air. The faint hoot of an owl, the crack of a branch settling in the cold, the distant chirp of nightbirds tucked into their nests. The forest speaks not with sharp sounds, but with soft murmurs that blend harmoniously with the valley's quiet nature. Even the air seems to hum, touched by the steady rhythm of the evening. The path bends, leading him toward a moonlit clearing where the fog rests lightly over the grass. He stops here often, letting the moments settle around him. Tonight, he takes a slow breath and closes his eyes, listening to the forest as a gentle lull. The cool air brushes his face, carrying the faint scent of pine and river water. In this clearing, the stories of Sleepy Hollow drift into his thoughts, the legends shared around hearth fires, spoken in soft tones, woven into memory rather than fear. Though the villagers enjoy their tales, Ichabod views them with gentle curiosity. To him, they are part of the valley's character, shaped by generations of voices and carried through time like seeds on a wandering breeze. When he opens his eyes again, the trees stand quietly around him, their branches swaying with the soft night wind. He adjusts his satchel and continues along the winding path. He walks not with urgency, but with the slow enjoyment of someone who finds peace in the journey itself. As he approaches the bridge near the old churchyard, the fog thickens, rising in pale clouds from the riverbank. Lanterns hung near the posts cast small pools of warm light that flicker gently through the haze. The water beneath the bridge flows steadily, its surface rippling with soft echoes of moonlight. The churchyard stands beyond, quiet and rooted in time, its ancient stones softened by moss. Ichabod has crossed this bridge countless times, yet each evening it feels new though the mist rearranges the world into a dreamlike painting. He pauses once more, resting his hand lightly on the wooden railing. The fog moves around him like a living breath, cool and comforting. The churchyard trees rustle faintly, their branches tapping gently against one another. It is here, in this peaceful and dreamlike corner of Sleepy Hollow, that the whispers of old legends feel closest, but they do not frighten him. Instead, they remind him of how deeply the past runs in this valley-ho. Memories rest as softly as fallen leaves, how stories linger in the air like faint echoes. He stands still, listening again. On nights like this, the whispering woods seem to speak more clearly. Their voices rise through the branches, the leaves, the fog comb, ancient and soothing. It is easy to imagine the valley breathing around him, holding its quiet mysteries with gentle, watchful calm. After a long moment, Ichabod steps off the bridge and continues down the final stretch of road toward the home where he stays. Lanterns glow warmly from its windows, guiding him forward. The path softens beneath his feet as he approaches the gate, and the sound of a crackling hearth reaches his ears. Before entering, he glances back at the woods, now half hidden by the deepening night fog. Their silhouettes blend into the darkness, peaceful and still. He feels a sense of gratitude for the quiet evening, for the valley's soft presence, and for the stories that drift like mist through the place he now calls home. Inside, he lights a small candle, places his books on the table, and sits beside the window where the fog presses gently against the glass. He reads until the flame grows low, then extinguishes it and rests beneath a warm quilt. Outside, the whispering woods continue their soft conversation, guiding Sleepy Hollow deeper into the night. And so, Ichabod, gentle schoolteacher of this tranquil valley, closes his eyes in a world shaped by mist, memory, and the quiet beauty of the woods that watch over the village. Night descends slowly over Sleepy Hollow, drawing a cool veil across the valley. The mist thickens along the winding roads, rising from the river in soft waves that drift through the fields and settle beneath the trees. Lanterns glow faintly in the village windows, their light trembling through the fog like warm stars fallen to earth. The quiet deepens, not with unease, but with the familiar calm that the valley has known for centuries. It is on nights like this, when the mist lies thick across the land, when the moon lifts slowly above the hills, and when the world feels wrapped in a gentle hush that the old legend of Sleepy Hollow is spoken, not in sharp tones or fearful whispers, but in the softened voice that the valley lends to every story. Here, even legends born of darker imaginings become calm reflections of history, carried by the quiet rhythm of the night. The people of Sleepy Hollow have always been storytellers. They gather near hearth fires, on porches, and sometimes along the stone bridge to share the tales passed down from their ancestors. Among these stories, one remains the most enduring, not because it inspires dread, but because it moves through the valley like the fog itself, subtle and ever-present. This is the legend of the wandering rider. In this soft-knit telling, the rider is not a figure of fear, but of unresolved memory, a presence shaped by the valley's long past. The villagers say that long ago, during the days of early conflicts in the region, a soldier never returned from battle. His fate, like many from that time, became unclear. Records grew faint. Stories shifted. The memory of him dissolved into the mist of the valley. But the villagers, with their gentle belief in the lingering presence of the past, began to speak of a rider who wandered the old roads at night, searching not for vengeance, but for a path long forgotten. The villagers never describe him with frightening detail, nor do they speak of him with dread. Instead, he is spoken of quietly, respectfully, as though he is simply another part of the valley, like the old trees, the calm river, or the stone bridge. They say he rides only when the mist is at its thickest, when the moon is hidden and the valley feels most dreamlike. Some describe him as a faint silhouette, seen only from a distance. Others say he is little more than a shape moving gently through the fog, accompanied by the slow, muffled sound of hoofbeats. In truth, most who speak of the wandering rider have never seen him. Their words echo stories told generations before, but softened by time, the way a sharp memory becomes gentle as years pass. Around hearth fires, the old storytellers describe the rider with warmth rather than fear, their voices carrying a sense of sympathy and understanding that some memories linger simply because they have nowhere else to go. Tonight, as the story is told once more, Sleepy Hollow rests in near silence. Families gather indoors, their homes lit by soft lamplight. Children curl beneath blankets, listening with sleepy eyes as elders share the tale in slow, steady tones. The adults lean back in their chairs, letting the gentle rhythm of the story drift into the quiet room. They speak of the old roads that twist through the woods, roads that existed long before the village took shape. These paths, worn and narrow, are lined with trees whose branches form archways overhead. Mist gathers especially thick in these places, rising in soft clouds from the earth as though the land itself exhales. It is through these hollow places that the rider is said to wander, moving neither quickly nor aimlessly, but with the slow patience of someone seeking something lost. One elder describes hearing faint hoofbeats years ago, while crossing the old bridge alone at dusk. He recalls how the sound was steady and calm-like, a traveler moving through the night with a quiet purpose. He did not see a figure, only felt a momentary shift in the air, as though someone else walked beside him for a brief moment before fading back into the mist. Another storyteller recalls a night when he walked through the fog after visiting a neighbor. He saw a distant shape along the road ahead, a silhouette blurred by mist, moving slowly toward the woods. When he called out, the figure did not respond. It simply continued onward, unhurried, dissolving into the thick canopy of trees. I felt no fear, only a strange sense of peaceful melancholy, as though he had glimpsed a memory drifting across the valley. These stories, softened by generations of retelling, shape the legend into something calm and reflective. It is not about fright or danger, but about how the past lingers in quiet places. The wandering rider becomes a reminder that time flows gently here, that memories can drift like fog, and that stories remain even when names are forgotten. As the villagers speak, the night grows deeper. The fog curls around the homes, pressing softly against windows. The river hums beneath the surface, steady and rhythmic. The old stone bridge stands silent, its arch wrapped in a silvery glow of moonlit mist. If the wandering rider moves anywhere tonight, he would pass through these familiar places, leaving only the faintest trace of presence like a soft breeze or a distant echo. In the woods near the churchyard, the trees whisper as they sway in the night wind. Their branches rustle in gentle tones, blending with the soft murmur of the river. The air is cool, carrying the scent of damp leaves and earth. This is the hour when the valley feels most connected to its past, when every shadow seems to hold a memory, and every sound echoes with soft familiarity. Some villagers say that the rider is drawn toward the old churchyard, where moss-covered headstones lean into the earth. They imagine him pausing near the wooden fence, as though searching for a name he can no longer recall. Others say he rides along the riverbank, the mist curling around him like a cloak, his form barely visible through the drifting whiteness. Whether he passes through the valley tonight or not, the legend remains part of Sleepy Hollow's gentle identity. It shapes the way the villagers view their home with a blend of reverence, curiosity, and quiet acceptance. The valley holds its stories, the way fog holds the moonlight, softening every edge. Inside the homes, the storytellers finish their tale. The fire crackles softly. Children close their eyes, unafraid, warmed by the sound of their elders' voices. The adults sit in peaceful silence for a moment longer, listening to the wind move through the trees outside. As the lamps dim and the homes grow quiet, Sleepy Hollow returns to its timeless calm. The mist settles once more over the roads, the bridge, the woods. Whether the wandering rider moves through these soft shadows is a mystery left to the night. But even if he does, he passes like a memory knot, sharp or haunting, but gentle, carried by the valley's breath. Here, legends drift, like fog soft, lingering, and peaceful. And in this quiet telling, the wandering rider becomes not a figure of fear, but a reminder that stories, like mist, remain long after the world has fallen asleep. In the stillness of early America, where forests rolled like quiet seas across the land and rivers glimmered beneath slow-moving clouds, stories drifted gently from place to place. Some were grand tales of heroes and wandering spirits, while others were simple memories that softened into legend over time. These stories, shaped by families gathered around hearth fires and travelers pausing beside quiet roads, became part of the nation as early tapestry threads of imagination woven into the calm rhythms of daily life. Tonight, as the valley sinks deeper into the quiet of evening, it is time to wander beyond Sleepy Hollow and step softly into other regions, where old stories linger like echoes carried on a cool wind. These legends, shaped by distance, yet connected by spirit, share the same restful tone that carried the country through long winters and peaceful nights. The world outside has grown hushed. The mist lies low along the fields. Stars appear faintly above the treetops. Against this backdrop, let us journey gently through a few of the stories whispered across early America tallies, softened by time, warmed by memory, and perfect for drifting into sleep. Rip Van Winkle's Long Slumber. Not far from the Hudson Valley, nestled among the ancient peaks of the Catskill Mountains, lies a legend cherished by travelers and villagers alike. It is the story of Rip Van Winkle, a humble, good-natured man known for his quiet heart and his tendency to wander into the mountains when the world grew too busy for his gentle spirit. Rip loved the simple things, the cool mountain breeze, the shade beneath tall pines, the sound of leaves rustling above him. He moved through the world with the soft presence of someone who sought peace more than purpose. One evening, after a long walk up the slopes, he rested under a tree, lulled by the stillness of the mountains. The forest hummed softly. The river whispered its endless song, and Rip drifted into a deep, untroubled sleep. Years passed, Wani. It is said while he rested beneath that tree, the world changed, but Rip remained untouched, wrapped in a dreamlike slumber as the mountains stood watch over him. When he woke, the leaves had turned, the branches had grown, and the village below had become new, yet strangely familiar. In this soft and retelling Rip's long sleep becomes a gentle reflection on the passage of time. How the world moves forward quietly, how memories settle, how change comes softly even to those who drift through life at their own pace. His story is not one of shock or loss, but of acceptance, of waking slowly to the realization that time itself has a kind, steady rhythm. The legend of Rip Van Winkle, like the mist over the cats, remains a reminder that rest, too, has its place in the long history of the land. The silent river spirits farther west, along the early American frontier where rivers served as pathways through untouched wilderness. Stories grew about gentle river, spirits quiet guardians of the waterways. These tales were not fearful or strange, but soothing, shaped by the calming sound of flowing water and the shimmering reflections of moonlight on gentle currents. Travelers along these river straders, trappers, and families seeking new homes often spoke of moments when the world felt unusually still. As their canoes drifted along the surface, they sometimes sensed the soft presence, like a whisper of wind or a ripple of memory. They believed the rivers held their own quiet spirits, protectors who watched over travelers and guided them through fog or sudden darkness. Some told of seeing faint lights drifting over the water at night, glowing like lanterns carried by unseen hands. Others recalled hearing soft humming melodies that blended with the sound of flowing water, calming the weary and encouraging them onward. These river spirits were never described as ominous. Instead, they were gentle companions of the frontier shadows of imagination. Perhaps, but comforting shadows nonetheless, for families traveling westward into uncertainty. These stories offered reassurance that they were not alone, that the river itself carried them forward with steady care. Tonight, as we imagine those old journeys, we can almost hear the soft hum of the river, the gentle lap of water against wooden boats, the quiet presence of unseen companions drifting nearby. Frontier hearth tales across the open prairies, where the land stretched wide beneath endless skies. Frontier families shaped their own gentle stories tallies born from long evenings, spent beside small hearth fires as winds swept through the tall grasses outside. These weren't grand myths, but simple hearth tales stories created to comfort children, to ease the minds of tired travelers, or to pass the time when winter snows crept against the cabin walls. One such story told of a kindly spirit known as the Lantern Watcher. It was said that on nights when storms rolled across the plains, travelers caught in the cold might see a faint lantern light ahead, a soft glow hovering just above the ground. The Lantern Watcher, they believed, guided lost wanderers toward safety. Some claimed the light belonged to an old settler who once lived alone on the prairie and cared for travelers who passed through. Others said it was simply the way the prairie grasses reflected lightning, softened by fog. But families like to imagine a benevolent figure guiding people through the storm. Another tale spoke of the windless Sonara figure who could hear messages carried by the prairie wind. Settlers described nights when the wind swept gently through the grasses, creating a sound like distant singing. They imagined it was the voice of the wind listener, sharing stories of weather, distant travelers, and the quiet movement of animals across the plains. The children of the frontier loved this story, believing the wind brought news from faraway places they had yet to see. These hearth tales were fragments of imagination, shaped by isolation and longing for companionship. But in their simplicity, they offered warmth, comfort, and a sense of shared wonder during nights when the prairie stretched endlessly into the dark. The forest guardian in the Appalachian Mountains, densed with towering trees and moss-covered stones. Families told of a calm figure known simply as the forest guardian, not a creature of fear, but a gentle caretaker, a spirit of the woods who watched over hunters, travelers, and children who wandered too far beneath the branches. People spoke of moments when they felt an unexpected calm settle over them during long journeys. When lost, they sometimes found themselves guided back to familiar paths by nothing more than a beam of light breaking through the canopy or a friendly breeze nudging them in the right direction. Some claimed they saw a faint shape among the trees, a tall, shadowed figure with a quiet presence, neither threatening nor clear enough to define. They believed the forest guardian walked the mountains at night, ensuring the woods remained peaceful and that those who roamed them returned safely home. In the quiet of night, This legend feels especially soothing, a reminder that even in the deep, wild woods, the land itself seems to provide companionship and calm. These stories Rip Van Winkle's Long Rest, the gentle river spirits, the prairie hearth tales, the guardian of the mountains are threads woven into early America's soft imagination. They arose from moments of stillness, from the hush of the wild, from the need to explain the world in ways that comforted rather than frightened. As you drift into the rhythm of these old tales, the land outside fades into quiet darkness. The forests rest, the rivers slow. The prairies sleep beneath the moon, and the legends, softened by generations of calm retelling, settle like mist over the landscape, peaceful companions to the long night. As the night drifts slowly over the early landscapes of America, we begin to see a pattern emerging among all the stories we have gently explored. From Johnny Appleseed planting orchards with tender care to Paul Bunyan moving through quiet northern forests and the soft whispers of Sleepy Hollow's fog-filled valleys, to the minor legends of rivers, pines, and firelit tales, there is a common thread woven through each of these narratives. It is a thread of shared human experience, of imagination, hope, and a quiet yearning for connection. In the soft glow of the settlers' hearths, these stories were more than simple entertainment. They were companions for long nights, guiding thoughts away from hardship and toward gentle reflection. Each tale offered comfort, a familiar rhythm in a world that was vast, wild, and sometimes lonely. When a child tucked under a warm blanket listened to the slow unfolding of Johnny Appleseed. As journeys the story invited dreams of walking among blossoming trees, the sunlight filtering through leaves, and the sound of a calm river whispering nearby. When Paul Bunyan's quiet deeds were retold, listeners imagined snow-laden forests, the steady rhythm of the lumberjack's work, and the serene companionship of a giant ox, rather than chaos or clamor. Even Sleepy Hollow, often remembered for eerie tales, was softened into a tale of calm valleys, whispering winds, and the gentle presence of community. All these legends, both grand and minor, shared a purpose. They were a means to preserve memory, culture, and hope. Settlers spoke these stories to keep the past alive, to honor the land they now inhabited, and to comfort one another during long, often harsh winters, when snow pressed softly against the cabin windows, when winds wrestled through the forests, and when the firelight danced across the walls. These stories became a gentle embrace, a bridge between the human heart and the vast world around it. The shared thread is also one of imagination. Myths and legends allowed the early Americans to dream, to see beyond the immediate hardships of life. They imagined a man wandering the country with apple seeds in his pockets, creating sweetness and nourishment wherever he went. They imagined a giant moving silently through the woods, shaping the world with quiet strength. They imagined small spirits tending to rivers, trees, and homes, ensuring that life flowed smoothly and gently. And they imagined communities coming together, sharing stories, and finding reassurance in knowing that even in the wildest moments, there was connection, care, and a sense of wonder. Each legend, while unique in its characters and settings, shares these common elements of calm, hope, and quiet reflection. Even the smaller, softer tales, Rip Van Winkle, the river spirits, the whispering pines, and firelight, legends carry this same underlying melody. They speak not of fear or urgency, but of observation, patience, and the beauty found in simple acts. Planting a tree, walking through a snowy forest, listening to a river, or sharing a story beside a glowing fire. These stories were a gentle reminder that the world, though vast and sometimes challenging, also held tenderness, continuity, and care. It is fascinating to notice how these stories, while originating in different regions and among different communities, all served a similar purpose. They were a quiet mirror of the human experience, reflecting desires for safety, comfort, and understanding. Johnny Appleseed's generosity mirrored the settlers' hope for growth and sustenance. Paul Bunyan's serene strength mirrored the human desire for resilience in the face of hardship. Sleepy Hollow and other whispered tales mirrored the settlers' need to navigate uncertainty while finding calm in the familiar. The river spirits whispering pines, and firelight legends mirrored a longing to connect with nature and the gentle rhythms of the world. Even more, these myths were communal. They were rarely told alone. Families gathered by the fire, travelers paused in inns, and children lay in beds as parents shared the stories that had been passed down through generations. Each retelling was slower than the last, more deliberate, allowing listeners to absorb the scenery, the characters, and the quiet lessons hidden within the narrative. They became lullabies of history, gentle bridges to imagination, and soothing companions for sleep. Through this calm exploration, it becomes clear that myths and legends are not just about the extraordinary. They are about noticing the ordinary, seeing the gentle magic in everyday life, and finding a rhythm in existence that brings peace. Settlers and travelers, far from the comforts of their original homes, needed stories that could be held close, stories that could wrap around their minds like a warm quilt. And so, they told these stories, not with excitement or haste, but with deliberate care, shaping a tradition of sleepy storytelling that has endured for centuries. Perhaps this is the true power of myth. It allows us to step softly into another time and place, to observe without interference, and to rest in the knowledge that, though life may be vast and mysterious, it can also be gentle, harmonious, and filled with moments of quiet wonder. The shared thread of these stories, whether whispered around a winter fire, murmured beside a river, or imagined among orchards and forest remains, a testament to humanity's enduring desire for calm, for hope, and for connection. And as the night deepens over the rolling hills, forests, and rivers of early America, the listener is invited to follow this thread, to imagine walking alongside Johnny Appleseed through orchards kissed by moonlight, to stroll quietly with Bunyan, through snow-laden forests, to drift along the foggy roads of Sleepy Hollow with gentle whispers guiding the way, to pause beside a sparkling river, listen to the sighing of the pines, and feel the warmth of a firelit cabin, deep in the winter woods. Each story, each legend, each gentle character is part of a larger pattern, a lullaby of a human experience that carries us safely toward rest. In the end, what binds these myths together is their simplicity, their softness, and their ability to offer comfort. They remind us that even in times of hardship, even in vast wilderness or unknown villages, there is always room for imagination, for reflection, and for serenity. The shared thread runs like a quiet river through the tapestry of early American folklore, inviting each listener to follow it gently and to find their own place of calm within the stories. And so, with these reflections lingering in the mind like the faintest glow of a distant fire, we prepare to drift further into the final chapter. As the night draws on, as mist settles over forests and rivers, and as the gentle whisper of these old tales fades into the hush of sleep, we come to the edge of our journey. It is here, in the quiet twilight of imagination and history, that the world itself seems to exhale, wrapping all the myths, all the legends, and all the listeners in a serene, timeless embrace. As our journey through the myths and legends of early America comes gently to a close, the night deepens, stretching softly across forests, rivers, and quiet villages. The moon rises with a tender glow, casting silver light over snow-dusted fields, mist-shrouded valleys, and orchards that sway quietly in the breeze. Every leaf, every ripple, and every branch seems to breathe with the calm rhythm of the settling night. This is a world where stories linger, soft as a whisper, and where the imagination, soothed by gentle tales, begins to drift toward peaceful slumber. The forest, once alive with the footsteps of wandering giants, the laughter of river spirits, and the gentle hum of orchard life, now settle into stillness. Paul Bunyan's towering figure seems to melt into the winter woods, the snow beneath his steps silent and soft. Babe, his faithful blue ox, lies in a quiet grove, eyes half closed, as the moonlight glints off the ice-dipped branches. Farther south, the meandering paths of Sleepy Hollow are wrapped in a calm fog, as though the mist itself has drawn a blanket over the village. The old Dutch houses stand patiently along the quiet roads, their shutters closed, chimneys whispering tiny curls of smoke into the frosty air. Every scene carries the gentle presence of stories past tales that guided the settlers through days of work, nights of reflection, and winters of stillness. Even Johnny Appleseed, who wandered endlessly through fields and villages, seems to pause for this final moment. His quiet footsteps are no longer needed to plant orchards, for now the seeds have grown into strong, nurturing trees. Their branches cradle the night air, their leaves rustling softly in a wind that carries the faintest scent of apples. Children, tucked into beds beneath thick quilts, dream of walking beside him, of feeling the cool earth underfoot, and of listening to the soft trickle of rivers that once guided his journey. These visions, gentle and unhurried, bring a sense of connection between the past and the present, reminding the listener that even the simplest acts of care leave traces that last far beyond a single day. Throughout the countryside, rivers glide with silvered calm, carrying the whispered stories of river spirits who watch over the waters. The quiet trickle of streams becomes a lullaby, a slow rhythm to match the listener's own breathing. Along their banks, trees sigh in the night wind, each one echoing the soft stories they've gathered over the centuries. Even the smallest creatures, foxes, rabbits, and owls, seem to pose, sensing the serene embrace of the evening, waiting patiently until the world is ready to rest fully beneath the starlit sky. The villages themselves, where human voices once spoke in the warm glow of firelight, now lie in tranquil silence. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, carrying the memory of meals shared, of gentle conversation, and of quiet reflection beside the hearth. Each house, each cabin, holds stories tucked into its walls, legends of courage, kindness, and calm observation. They wait for another day, another telling, when voices will once again rise softly, weaving imagination with the tender reality of life. But for now, all is still. The night stretches, uninterrupted, across the land, as though time itself has taken a slow, deliberate breath. And in this calm, the listener can sense the collective heartbeat of all the myths we have explored. Rip Van Winkle rests under a familiar tree, eyes closed in a timeless slumber, the village around him humming quietly with continuity. The whispering pines murmur their gentle messages to the moonlit air, carrying a calm reassurance that all is well. Firelight legends linger in imagination, guiding dreams, shaping visions, and soothing thoughts that might otherwise wander too far. Each story, each legend, each gentle character now fades into a serene twilight of memory, leaving only the warmth of their presence in the mind. This is the final moment of our journey, a moment to let the night fully envelop both the tales and the listener. The air grows heavier with mist, curling around the trees, drifting through the valleys, and wrapping the hills in a silken hush. The snow, if present, softens every sound, transforming even the quietest footstep into a gentle thrum of peace. The forests, the rivers, and the fields rest under a delicate blanket of silver light, their stories now whispered into the mind like a slow, comforting song. And as the storyteller's voice begins to fade, replaced by the soft, lingering notes of relaxing music, the journey comes to its natural close. You, the listener, are invited to follow this calm, letting the tales of Johnny Appleseed, Paul Bunyan, Sleepy Hollow, and the many minor legends drift into dreams. The night is yours now, a quiet expanse of imagination, memory, and gentle reflection. There is no hurry, no need to rise, only the soft pulse of history and myth, blending seamlessly with the rhythm of your breathing. The New World, in its early days, was vast and full of wonder, and though the settlers and travelers lived lives often marked by challenge, the stories they told and cherished carried a soothing, timeless magic. They remind us that the world is not only a place of toil and struggle, but also of serenity, kindness, and imagination. As you drift further into sleep, you may carry fragments of orchards, forests, foggy villages, and gentle giants into your dreams, each one a quiet companion on your journey through the night. So now, as mist thickens over the hills, as the last flickers of firelight fade, and as the gentle hum of relaxing music fills the space, allow yourself to sink deeper into calm. The myths of early America have woven themselves into the quiet of your mind, creating a tapestry of comfort, wonder, and peace. Each story, each whisper, each legend now rests alongside you, accompanying your thoughts as they soften, slow, and finally dissolve into the restful embrace of sleep. Tonight, the New World sleeps as it once did, under stars, over rivers, and through forests, whispering tales of kindness, imagination, and hope. And you, dear listener, drift with it, cradled in the warmth of these stories, gently carried into the quiet, serene night. As our journey through the soft, whispering legends of early America comes to a close, the forests, rivers, and villages grow quiet beneath the gentle light of the moon. The stories of Johnny Appleseed, Paul Bunyan, Sleepy Hollow, and the many minor Tillies we have explored tonight now rest softly in your mind, like a warm, comforting blanket. Let the gentle rhythms of the night, the hush of the forests, and the quiet magic of these myths guide you into peaceful dreams. Our time together drifts gently into relaxing music, a lullaby of history and imagination, inviting your thoughts to slow, soften, and rest. Thank you, dear viewers and listeners, for traveling with us through these sleepy stories. If you enjoyed this journey, please consider subscribing to our channel for more.com/historicaltales, each paired with soothing music to help you relax, reflect, and fall asleep peacefully. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with gentle legends and quiet wonder.